series of death threats arrived like poisoned love letters, meticulously composed by that mysterious author. A young wife of exquisite beauty finds herself stalked by a shadowy beast. When I behold this vision of tremulous beauty, her kimono sleeve quivers like a trapped butterfly. Could I, a purveyor of mere fictional mysteries, snatch this exquisite prey from the jaws of the shadow beast? Hi, this is Midnight Corridor. Tonight we are going to read Beast in the Shadows by Edogawa Ranpo. The story began beneath the colossal glass dome of Tokyo's Imperial Household Museum. I, a novelist who made my living weaving tales of deduction, found myself entranced by an ancient Egyptian mask displayed in its glass case. The afternoon sun streamed through the stained glass, casting dappled patterns upon the floor. And at that very moment, a figure intruded upon my line of sight. She was a woman clad in a kimono, perhaps in her early 30s, her hair arranged in an impeccably neat chignon. The slender wrists peeking from her sleeves resembled the finest white porcelain. What caught my attention most, however, was a faint crimson mark on the left side of her neck, visible through the translucent collar like a smear of dried blood, or perhaps an uncanny birthmark. She stood before the exhibit of Indian stone carvings, her fingertip lightly touching her chin, her gaze so intensely focused that it seemed as though the entire museum had dissolved, leaving only her and those silent statues in a world of their own. The conversation began abruptly. Whether I had spoken first or she had initiated it, I could not tell. "Do you too take an interest in these uncanny foreign arts?" She turned, her eyes gliding with just the right measure of surprise. "You as well? I've always felt these stones hold secrets sealed away by time." Her voice was like silk steeped in dew. "I am Shizuko Oyamada, a frequent visitor here." We spoke for a while, our discussion drifting from Gantara Buddhas to Edo period ukiyo-e. She confessed she was the wife of industrialist Rokuro Oyamada, yet held no interest in her husband's commercial empire. Her obsession lay solely in literature. As we parted, she took the business card I offered, her fingertips brushing lightly against mine. The coolness of her touch sent an inexplicable shudder through me. A week later, an envelope bearing elegant handwriting appeared on my desk. Our correspondence continued for 3 months, discussing everything from Baudelaire's decadent poetics to Collins's detective novels. Shizuko's letters were sharp and profound, her insights always offering me fresh inspiration, unlike what one might expect from a sheltered society matron. Then, on a certain early summer morning, a note slipped out from the envelope. "Might I visit you tomorrow at 3 in the afternoon? There is something I find myself unable to confide in anyone else about." In my study, the oak bookshelves cast mottled shadows in the twilight as the antique clock ticked steadily. I was just shelving the last volume of New Tales of the Strange when the doorbell rang. Shizuko stood at the entrance, the hem of her wisteria-colored kimono dusted with ginkgo leaves. Her fingers, twisting the tassels of her obi, were pale with tension, and in her usually serene eyes flickered ripples of unease. "Have you heard of Oshunde?" she asked. The name was, of course, familiar to me, a writer specializing in grotesque fiction, his works filled with locked-room murders, cursed dolls, and other macabre tales. Yet he remained an enigma, never appearing in public. "I know of him. Why do you ask?" With a sudden motion, Shizuko shook a bundle of envelopes from her sleeve, their edges crumpled from repeated handling. He has been tormenting me," her voice trembled. "We were lovers when we were young, but after I married Rokuro, all contact ceased. Yet recently, he has begun reaching out again." Shizuko had grown up in affluence, her life one of contentment until her graduation from girls' school. In her youth, swayed by the honeyed words of a man, she had indulged in a fleeting romance, more a capricious imitation of her peers than true affection. But while her feelings were shallow, his became an obsession. She began avoiding his relentless advances, only to provoke greater fixation. Soon, shadows lurked beyond her family's walls at night, and threatening letters arrived in steady succession. The terror of youthful folly turned to dread weighed heavily upon her. The once carefree girl now trembled in fear, her distress so palpable that even her parents grew deeply troubled. But soon, a great misfortune befell Shizuko's family, though for her it proved to be a blessing in disguise. The financial world was in turmoil at the time. Her father, having mismanaged his business and incurred massive debts, hastily shuttered his operations and fled under cover of night with help from a friend, disappearing under an assumed name. Shizuko was forced to withdraw from school midterm. Yet for her, this sudden relocation meant escape from his relentless pursuit. A relief, in truth. Her voice choked with emotion as she haltingly recounted those fear-stricken days. The threatening letters had not only detailed her daily movements with unsettling precision, but also seethed with madness and venom, leaving her sleepless night after night. She had believed the past buried, never imagining that this haunting nightmare would resurface years later to ensnare her once more. I'd heard the name Oe Shunde long ago, but I never dreamed he might be my ex-lover, Shizuko explained to me. I drew out one of the letters. Its envelope bore no postage, clearly hand-delivered. Unfolding the page, I was met with a scrawl that exuded an indescribable eeriness. Miss Shizuko, I have found you at last. The moment I saw you again, I began following you, learning your current address, discovering you now bear the name Oyamada. Surely you haven't forgotten me. You must remember what a detestable lover I was. But you, fickle heart that you are, could never comprehend the torment I endured after you cast me aside. How could you understand the agony of a man scorned by his beloved? For years, I searched for you, drowning in an obsession from which I could not escape. Even after marrying, your specter haunted the depths of my soul. All those years of longing twisted slowly into something far more corrosive, a malice that gnaws at the bone. About 3 years ago, I wrote a story to vent my anguish. Yet that very story became my salvation. You must have heard of the writer Oe Shunde. That man is none other than myself. Did you imagine I would lose myself in the hollow fame of a novelist and forget my hatred for you? No, no. Those bloody tales of mine were born from the depths of my loathing for you. The paranoia, the obsession, the cruelty, every word drips with my relentless thirst for vengeance. Shizuko, I know all your secrets. Soon you will understand the price of betrayal. The letter went on to detail Shizuko's daily routines and private habits, a chilling testament to his surveillance. At the bottom, scrawled in crimson ink, was the distorted outline of a beast, and beside it, the words, "Yours eternally, Oe Shunde." How could he know all this? I instinctively crumpled the letter in my grip. Are you certain it's from him? Who else could it be? Shizuko's eyes reddened. Suddenly, she seized my wrist, her kimono collar slipping to reveal that crimson mark once more. Sir, I'm terrified. I feel eyes watching me day and night. As I studied the tremble of her lashes, a complex tide of emotions surged within me. Pity for the suffering beauty, yes, but also the keen instincts of a mystery novelist. What seemed mere harassment concealed darker undercurrents. I gently patted her quivering shoulder. Don't fear, I'll help you. I'll find Oe Shunde and end this. Her tearful gaze met mine, brimming with gratitude and dependence. After seeing her out, I sat at my desk, poring over the threatening letters for clues. Yet the deeper I delved, the more the truth seemed shrouded in an impenetrable fog, elusive, inscrutable. One day, Shizuko Oyamada called me at my residence, her voice trembling as she spoke of another terrifying incident. She begged me to visit her home at once. Her husband was away, and most of the servants had been sent off on distant errands, leaving her alone to await my arrival. By dismissing even the usual unreliable servants during her husband's absence and secretly summoning me to her home, this invitation carried an unspoken implication that stirred indescribable emotions within me. The Oyamada residence stood tucked away behind storefronts, an old-fashioned Western-style villa with a melancholic elegance tinged with decay. Though its front gave no indication, I suspected a great river must flow behind the house. After presenting my card, a young country maid led me to the parlor of the Western-style annex, where Shizuko waited with an expression most peculiar. She repeatedly apologized for the impropriety of this meeting before suddenly lowering her voice. Please look at this first. She handed me an envelope. Then, as if fearing something, glanced nervously behind her and leaned closer. Needless to say, the letter bore the unmistakable mark of Oe Shunde, yet its contents held a disturbing evolution from before. As you've no doubt guessed, while observing your every move each night, I've also borne witness to every intimate moment between you and your husband. This has driven me to the brink of madness, an element I hadn't fully accounted for in my initial plans for revenge. Yet far from hindering my designs, these torments have only fueled the inferno of my jealousy. But after witnessing such scenes of marital bliss, I've altered my scheme. Before delivering your death, I shall first make you watch as your beloved husband dies before your eyes. Only after you've drunk deep from the cup of despair will your own end come. This is my final decision, but fret not, I'm a patient man. It would be far too merciful to proceed to the next act before thoroughly tormenting you as you read these very words. Oe Shunde is in this house. Where? For a moment my mind went blank, unable to comprehend her meaning. You're saying that madman is hiding here in broad daylight. Surely this must be your imagination. Mid-sentence, she suddenly stiffened. Raising a warning finger to her lips, she seized my hand and pulled me into a corner of the room. Then, with deliberate slowness, her gaze traveled upward to the ceiling directly above where we stood. We stood frozen, staring at each other as we strained our ears. Though it was broad daylight, the depths of the mansion lay in such profound silence that one could almost hear blood pulsing through veins. "Don't you hear the ticking?" Shizuko finally whispered, her voice barely audible. At first I thought it was tinnitus, but when I listened carefully, I realized it was a metallic scraping sound. Shizuko had become convinced the man was hiding in the ceiling, that the sound came from his pocket watch. As she spoke, I suddenly recalled Oe Shunde's horror story, The Ceiling Walker. If the ticking wasn't mere imagination, but proof of Shunde's actual presence, it meant he was recreating the very scenario from his fiction, a move perfectly in character. Having read The Ceiling Walker myself, I couldn't dismiss Shizuko's seemingly paranoid claims. After deliberation, I resolved to inspect the ceiling space above Shizuko's parlor to verify if anyone had been there, and if so, how they entered and exited. The attic proved nothing like the sinister playground described in Shunde's story. Though an old house, the ceiling had been completely dismantled and cleaned during year-end maintenance, leaving the space surprisingly dust-free. After only a short distance, I began to realize Shizuko's fears might not be unfounded. Both the beams and ceiling panels bore traces of human activity. A chill ran down my spine. Having read the novel, the image of the unseen Oe Shunde crawling through the attic like a venomous spider made my heart pound so violently I feared it might leap from my throat. The intruder appeared to have traversed the entire mansion's ceiling space, leaving scattered handprints and footprints in the dust. With stiffened limbs, I followed these faint trails, single-mindedly tracking Shunde's movements. As expected, the areas above the parlor and bedrooms showed particularly disturbed dust patterns, likely due to the abundance of gaps between panels, clear signs someone had lingered there. Unfortunately, the prints were too smudged for clear identification, let alone fingerprints, yet I did discover one tangible clue. Above the parlor, tucked inconspicuously beneath a supporting beam, lay a polished metal button embossed with the letters RK Bros Co. It might have been a hat ornament or similar accessory, though I couldn't be certain. When I showed it to Shizuko downstairs, she appeared equally perplexed. I did my best to reassure her, and perhaps too rashly, promised to enlist some like-minded friends to patrol the premises nightly. Fortunately, the Western-style annex had a guest room on its second floor. Shizuko decided they would temporarily move their bedroom there under some pretext. At least in the annex, no one could spy on them from above through ceiling gaps. Thus, these defensive measures were implemented the following day. Yet the sinister machinations of the beast-like Oe Shunde could not be thwarted by such simple precautions. 2 days later, on the night of March 19th, he fulfilled his prophecy, claiming his first victim. Rokuro Oyamada's life was brutally cut short. By the Azuma Bridge, police lines cordoned off the scene as dawn mist swirled around the corpse, laid upon a makeshift straw mat. Rokuro was nearly naked, clad only in white undergarments, but most horrifying was his head, where his close-cropped hair should have been. A dripping wet wig clung to his scalp, its strands still oozing river water. The curtain falls temporarily on Rokuro's bizarre death, his unclothed corpse, that unsettling wig, the dubious drowning circumstances. Is this truly Okawa Harunezumi's vengeance? What truth festers behind this meticulously staged scene? The beautiful widow's trembling hands, the phantom killer slithering through shadows. In our next video, I, the detective novelist, shall plunge deeper into this labyrinth of deception, peeling away each rancid layer until the naked truth lies exposed. Since this video references original material and requires translation work, I've split it into 2 parts. Part 2 is still in production. Creating authentic Japanese-themed content is not an easy task. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up to let me know you're looking forward to the next episode. Or if you appreciate this style of content, don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss our next video.